somebody's mentioned Matt Gill before. It may well have even been on the show. Somebody
it was Tom Boyes on here. Tom's well ahead of the curve.
And reeled off his CV and said, would it surprise you to find out that that's Matt Gill I'm talking about? And I was sat there thinking, well, do you know what? That's some good credentials there. Right, the Tranmere and the fans being the way they are, we've got a problem here. We need to bring in a manager who is going to fit the model, the recruitment model, and the type of player we need to bring in. It needs to be a manager who can work with those players. It needs to be a manager who plays exciting football, otherwise the fans aren't very happy. It needs to be a manager who is cheap enough for us to actually afford him and yet still be able to bring quality players in. But fans being the way they are, it also needs to be a name that inspires the fans. It can't be a nobody, because too many people are going to be unhappy, and you shouldn't have to think like that. You shouldn't have to think about, oh, what's the fans' reaction going to be to this? But unfortunately, that is how you've got to think. And I think there's a lot of names out there who they're unproven, but actually, Matt Gill's the perfect example. Who's to say he'd be a bad appointment? Because you can't judge him on when he was here as a player coach years back, when everybody knows we were a basket case then. He was obviously only just starting his coaching then. He wasn't actually the manager. He took caretaker charge for a few games, but you can't judge him on that. So I think I'm not saying I want Matt Gill. He would not be my choice if I had to pick a name. But I don't think you can judge him for it either. But I don't think that the Payless will get away with employing someone like that, because it's always going to be, oh, he's a dinosaur if it's someone who's done the rounds around the League 1 and League 2. Or it's going to be the cheap option if you've gone with someone who's got their first job. It's a bit of a no-win for not for the first time. The Payless has got a situation where I don't think we can afford the Cowleys, and if it's not the Cowleys, there's no other name out there that universally pacifies the fans, and that's the challenge. So if it was me, I'm happy with anyone who's got a track record working with the youngsters and developing youngsters. So Barry Murphy was one that I thought, yeah, that sounds good. I think, is it Anthony Barry? Is that the name that's been touted around in the past? I think he's...
Well, he got offered the job, didn't he? And he turned it down and went to Chelsea, and he's now gone to Bayern Munich with Thomas Tuchel. So I don't think he's going to be rocking up anytime soon.
Probably not interested in it, but I always like the sound of him. But again, that's a good point. I'm glad you've sort of told me that, because sometimes you look at coaches and people think, well, surely he'll want to leave a job as a coach somewhere to come and be the main man at Tranmere Rovers. Well, Tranmere are not as big as some of our fans think. We're not this massive opportunity, and it's not an easy job, because if you get off to a bad start, then the fans want you out, and it's as simple as that. So is a coach going to want to leave a cushy coaching role at a big club where he's working with good players with no pressure? Because when you're a coach, you're not going to get binned off. It doesn't really work like that. Whereas you take the Tranmere job, you leave a cushy, comfortably paid job to become the main man at Tranmere for a few weeks, and then you get sacked, then you're left with nothing. So we're not the proposition that people seem to think we are. So we are limited in who we're going to be able to bring in. I do always laugh every time there's a vacancy, because the names that we throw around, I always find completely unrealistic. With hindsight, Keith Hill was a bad appointment. I know that now. But at the time when we appointed him, he was probably the best of the rest. You had your Adkins, you had your Paul Cook, and you had your Cowleys. And then if it wasn't going to be any of them, then the best of the rest was him. There wasn't any other names that sort of had the CV as him. So it's a real no-win situation, I think, for the Payless, because whoever he brings in is going to be the cheap option, or it's going to be a dinosaur, or it's going to be someone completely underwhelming. I don't have a problem with anyone who it's going to be, so long as they've interviewed well and they know what restraints the Payless is going to have to enforce on them. What's the budget going to be, and what type of players they're going to have to work with. I think Mickey was served a rough one there, but by the fact he came in a couple of years ago, halfway through this project, we changed to a new recruitment policy, and he's left without the tools he needs to get success. It would be unfair to do that to any other manager. So the main thing is the synchronization, whether that means we change the policy, the transfer policy. Do we change that to match the manager again? Or do we bring a manager to fit this new recruitment policy and see it through? In which case, the likes of Barry Murphy or Matt Gill would be absolutely perfect. So I'm going to sit on the fence, much like everyone else, and say, anyone, I'll back them all.